we know that representation matters in all media. And if we're not seeing or hearing or reading scenes in which people are enjoying sexual connection and intimate connection without it being, and then his dick got really hard and rammed it into her, right? Or him or whatever, then there's a crisis of imagination.
I'm Rachel, and you're listening to the Owning Your Sexual Self podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Oh, I'm excited for this week's episode. This is another guest that I decided to bring on the show to shed some light on a topic that I think is important. This is something that we really haven't discussed so far on this show. And by the way, can we believe that we've been podcasting for 5 years now? Oh my gosh. Never imagined when I started this that it would be now 5 years strong. Just still crazy to even think about that. But anyways, I want to introduce our guest before she jumps on here. So I have on Erica with me, who is the founder and chief erotic officer. Ooh, I love that. Of Creative Body Release, a philosophy and a methodology that is built upon 30 plus years of body and mind training and educational expertise. And Erica is an advocate, guide, practitioner, a lover, a mother, and a grandmother, as well as a certified family life educator, a certified sexological body worker, human development specialist, healing arts professional, erotic artist and educator, and as we are discussing on this podcast today, she is the newest hostess of Soft Cock Appreciation Week. Yes, you heard me right. Soft Cock Appreciation Week. An entire week of the year dedicated solely to honoring and worshiping and valuing soft cock. So, a little bit more about Erica. Her life's mission really pivoted from equity in education systems to equity in healthcare after the sudden death of her fiance to undiagnosed diabetes, in which sexual function was the main hidden tell. Her work since 2012 has been focused helping men and those who love them to demystify the international erectile epidemic using research-informed best practices from multiple disciplines, common sense, and a knowing splash of women's intuition. Oh, I love that intro. As you can tell, Erica has a wealth of knowledge and guidance that she's going to be show for us today. So, if you just heard that little ding, 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 that means she's in the waiting room. So let me stop yabbing here. I'm excited to bring her in. And without further ado, all right, welcome, Erica. Thank you so much again for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, and I love the artwork behind you. We're talking soft cock, and I like your
Yes.
they're just like hanging out in a hammock, very chill. I love it.
Yes, that is our Soft Cock Appreciation Week logo for the year. Our mascot is the rooster in the hammock, just chilling, relaxed.
Yes, and I love that we're talking about this because this, I met you and I heard about Soft Cock Week in our, what would we call this, sex coach professionals group that we meet
Mhm.
a couple times a month. And you were talking about this, and I was like, wow, what a beautiful resource and something that we need to shed light on the show. And then it came up recently with a client that is having some challenges with erectile dysfunction, has been for some time, and then within partnership trying to navigate, right, like what does intimacy look like without penetration or with soft cock, right? um,
Mhm.
and I'm excited to hear from you because you're the opposite. Like, I mostly work with women who are in relationships with men, and then you're mostly working with men who are in relationships with women, so this is like a beautiful combo that's coming together.
Perfect. Exactly. Good.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to
Yeah.
you have an interesting story. Like in 2012, things kind of transitioned for you. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about you, what got you in this work, and then celebrating you taking over Soft Cock Week for the first time this year.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Yeah, so I mean, my story leading up to Soft Cock Week is that in 2011, up until 2011, I was in education, and I spent, my 20s and 30s and 40s really active in education reform. And prior to that, in my late teens, early 20s, I became a licensed massage therapist and a clinical herbalist, and I was in alternative healthcare and mostly working with women and really saw like, oh, there's something here where the mind body connection was like really interesting to me. That has always been interesting to me. And I like went on this journey to figure out how creativity, in particular, creative thinking, creative activity, how how we think of ourselves as creative beings, as imaginative beings, has something to do with how our body is well and healthy. And
Mhm.
so that's what led me to leave massage therapy, go back to school, get an undergraduate in expressive art therapy, which led me to a master's degree in education. I focused on Waldorf and non-traditional pedagogies, was really active, like I said, in education reform. And then in 2011, my life just completely blew up. And a big piece of that was that my fiance died of undiagnosed diabetes in his sleep at the age of 42. And that really, between the grief that I was experiencing for myself, the shock, the trauma, um, and then just like everything that fell apart in terms of what we were working on together in community activism, I was like, I need a whole new thing.
Mhm.
Right. And somewhere along the line, I had this plan B. Right. While I was working with government money to build a new high school. And I just kind of had joked with my fiance, like, well, if this doesn't come to pass, I'll do the sexological bodywork training. And honestly, I have no idea even where I found it.
Mhm.
But when everything went to shit, I was like, well, let me look at the sexological bodywork training. So I did that in 2012. And there were two things that really came out of it. One was how really focusing on masturbation coaching and masturbation as a health practice and as a, mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual, existential health really helped me through my grief. So it was personal. But also, what I found, Rachel, was that a lot of the people that I was meeting and more as I was in this world of sex coaching and sexological body work and intimacy professionals, was that there were a lot of people who were really focusing their work on people with, who are female identified, born female at birth, have vulvas, or we're working more in the trans, and I'm on the West Coast, so maybe that's part of this too, but we're working more in like the trans non-binary queer world, and that there weren't that many people who were addressing what was going on for, predominantly cis men, and I would say cis het men that also are kind of like exploring and open to what's beyond heteronormative
Mhm.
um, concepts, I guess,
Mhm.
for lack of a better word. And because of what happened, so when my fiance died, he died of undiagnosed diabetes. They were able to identify that right away, based on what the urine sample that was there. And while we had been together, there was something that was detectable in his erectile function.
Mhm.
And he knew it when we first met. He knew it. He was saying, uh, I have this ebb and flow. I don't necessarily, I can get hard, but I don't stay hard. And he had done what a lot of men do, which is he'd become really an amazing giver, right?
Mhm.
That he derived a lot of his pleasure from giving, which I see a lot in my work.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's great. But, I do like penetration. And, so let's talk about this. So it was also one of the most open conversations. I had been married twice, over the course of 2+ decades. And this was the most like open conversation because of this, like, well, sometimes you're hard and sometimes you're not. And, rather than that being a thing, what can we do? Like, how do we want to even think about our sex life together? What does it even really mean? And what we really came to was like, well, this is play, this is rejuvenation, this is respite, this is sacred. And when we make time for each other, let's just not let any other energy in. And however your penis shows up is how your penis shows up. We've got toys, we've got camera play, we've got so many other things that we love to do, love to touch, love to, giggle. There's so many other things. So it's really expansive. But I was aware throughout the whole time that even while we had remediated a lot of the blood flow issue, that there was something going on with his ejaculation.
Mm.
That it was very rare that he ejaculated. That and for him, and I say, and this is really interesting now in the world of like no fap November and like semen retention, is that a lot of men really, there's a lot out there around hold it in
Mm-hmm.
and be multi-orgasmic. And that's kind of what was happening, was that he was having incredible orgasms. I was enjoying it, but I like that last, right? Like it gets me. And
Mm-hmm.
we were in a poly relationship. So, I was aware of it, but I was getting that somewhere else. So I was like, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to bring it up when we've done so much to remediate the emotional stuff that he thought was the cause of of the blood flow part.
Mm-hmm.
But when he died, and it was so sudden, and I started to do my research because it was really this like, what did I miss?
Yeah.
How could I have missed this? That I learned that one of the tells for diabetes is retrograde ejaculation, which is where the ejaculate gets absorbed back into the body rather than flowing out the urethral tube.
Mm.
And so, all that to say, that combined with doing the sexological body work made me realize, there's a lot more to what the penis in particular, I don't even want to say what the penis is telling us
Mhm.
that we're not really listening to and we don't really understand. It becomes, there's a lot that's like stress
Mhm.
and that's lumped into a giant bucket. Or, there's is it heart disease? Is it prostate cancer? Is it diabetes? What are the things that are physical? And there's just a lot of unknowns. So, really, since 2012, I have been on this quest
Mhm.
to better understand what the hell is going on with erectile function and how it is still a great mystery. And even though we're now in, this period of time where, we've made a lot of forward progress in women's sexual health and now, we're questioning what's going to happen with that.
Mhm.
Even with that, what I've learned over the last decade plus is where we are with men's sexual health is like kind of where we were with women's sexual health in the 40s and 50s. Like prostate cancer screening isn't like insurances aren't mandated to cover it.
Mhm.
Like we get free pap smears,
Mhm.
but like we're still fighting in on the government level to say this thing that is the second highest killer of men, and that if you live past a certain age, you're pretty much guaranteed to have prostate cancer. But screening isn't something that has to be covered,
Mhm.
right? So there's just some interesting things around um, what this whole package of being a man with a penis really is all about. And so that's been my quest, my interest. And I met Michelle 2 years ago, and she was doing soft cock appreciation or soft cock week at the time. And I shadowed her last year, and we were like, let's see if this is a transfer of the baby. And voila, this year I took it on. And so that's a long answer or to your question, but that's how I got to where I am today.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for all that detail and, for being vulnerable enough to share your story. I know that's very
Mhm.
heartfelt and that comes from a deep,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, I think it's people that have lived experiences like you do that can really, right? You really have the motivation, the passion behind it to want to seek answers.
Yeah.
It's something bigger for you. And I think yeah, that's wonderful, right? Like turning the trauma into triumph, if you will, how
Exactly.
it goes. But even just that, right? Like that story that you just shared, how many other men right, are having things going on with their penis or with their ejaculation that they're feeling shame around, that they're not sharing with their partners or they're not telling their doctors about.
Hmm.
And I think that goes hand in hand, right, for women that are experiencing low desire or like vaginal related things. But for men, I feel like the male identity is so attached to their penis and how their penis is functioning. You know,
Exactly.
locker room talk and sex talks that they got, porn that they see, like there's so much pressure on the penis. So for a man, when things start working not how the movies are, are telling them that
Right.
it's like, oh shit, like I don't want to tell anybody this. And then right, what happens over time if this is a major issue and it is, something physical and even if it is something mental that's contributing to that.
Hmm.
Right? So yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that there's a lot of I call it cock confusion.
Mhm.
Um, right. There's a lot of, also, am I allowed to be, attracted to a woman that I see? Am I allowed to, and most of that is no, right? In the sense of, the penis is a sensory organ and is wired, if we were just living in our mammal form, our human mammal form, I mean, it's wired to respond to external stimuli as well as internal stimuli. You and I are lucky in that we don't have an obvious sensory antenna. I can eat something that's delicious or hear something that's amazing and turns me on or read something. And I may feel some engorgement in my clitoris. I may feel some engorgement in my labia, but I'm not having to dissociate my experience of the senses from my body because of my fear that my normal human reaction to sensory stimuli is going to do something that then says to other humans in my space, that's not, you're not supposed to, you're not supposed to have an erection in this situation, in this situation. So really, one of the things I've seen, Rachel, is that, and this comes from my work in education, is that from a really young age, we're really asking people in penis bodies to start pretty dissociating and delineating, I guess you could say, like what is sex where this is allowed versus the whole rest of the time that I'm in a body.
Mhm.
And so, that's been an interesting piece for me of like demystifying this why, really the question for me has been, why are the numbers as high as they are? Why are we saying, between 30 and 50% of men at midlife are going to have a body part that is not fully functioning?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. That's really been my underlying quest because I am a researcher
Mhm.
and I'm super, I like to have like an essential question that drives me. And the essential question that's been driving me is really, you know, I don't think there's any other part of the body that has the number as high in
Mhm.
terms of proportion. They're saying like, it varies the research, but more or less it's like proportionate to age. So, if we said, well, 50% of women are not going to have a functioning liver at 50,
Right.
we wouldn't just be like, well, here's Viagra, right?
Mhm.
We'd be looking at more like what are all the contributing factors to this and how do we remediate it?
Mhm.
And so that's really, those are the elements that I get curious about. And I think a lot of men are, when I look at those rates, we have to really look at the whole picture of, what does it even mean to be, a little boy, an adolescent, a young man, looking through the lifespan to
Mhm.
see what is that. And I think, it's interesting right now to have done Soft Cock Appreciation Week the week after the election
Mhm.
where I wasn't really sure would people show up? What's the energy going to be? But I got to be in this really beautiful bliss bubble of hanging out with men in their vulnerability. Soft cock appreciation is not just about the penis. It's really about, that most of the time men are walking around soft,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, there's an element of how do we appreciate, like I said, sort of that split because what happens for a lot of men and their partners is, it becomes we're not turned on And then there's such an expectation, especially on the penis, of you're supposed to be the driving force that says it's go time,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And when that's not there, I think it's confusing to all partners,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, oh, this is, I mean, I think, in our world, we talk about responsive desire and spontaneous desire. And that's really what I think I see a lot, is that a lot of men are used to, this is the thing I don't have to think about. My penis just comes on. And so there it is.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of partners are like, this is the thing I don't have to think about because, his penis just comes on and there it is. And then when that isn't happening, then we have to really do a whole switch around, you know, the conversations that I think are a little bit more normalized for people with a vulva, right? Which is like, what does turn you on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That it's not automatic, that there's a process of warming up and getting in the mood. And what is that? And yeah.
That's so interesting because as you were speaking with this, this being the second highest thing in the world that men experience, and right at this certain age, right, it's like it essentially all goes downhill from there. When you were speaking about that, I was like, this almost feels like it's the male version of menopause, right? Like women, we go through menopause and then
Hmm.
all these vulva changes and brain changes, like all this, happens in the mind and body. And then right for men now it's this thing, but it's so interesting that it's both genitalia related for us, right? And
Exactly. I mean, it's all hormones, right? I mean, that element of it. And you see it. Like, again, I work with, I generally am working with people in that like 35 to 85-year range, right? So, in that substantial like midlife part, often what we see with men is, sort of the change to quote unquote dad bod, right? Where there's a softening of the abdomen, if that, where, we know that abdominal fat is where cortisol likes to live,
Mhm.
right? And it's pretty stressful to be a man in the world right now. And so, and then the more cortisol you have, then you're looking at uh, less erectile function,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? There's, the more your body is making the cortisol, adrenaline hormones and not as much the oxytocin, serotonin hormones. Plus, you do have, the lowering of testosterone. So in that, like, in that period of time that we could call andropause, right, which is similar to menopause. And I think there is a periandropausal period. I mean, I haven't seen much research on this, but just from my own observation, I think, there's definitely something that's happening, especially, sort of men who become dads.
Mhm.
Like there is something about kind of what's happening in that role that changes because your hormones are being impacted by little human hormones, and the hormones of your partner.
Mhm.
So there's, some things that happen there. And then we know that testosterone decreases. And there, during Soft Cock Week, we have one of the interviews that's there is with a functional medical doctor talking specifically about low T, because that was a big question that I had is like, I hear it. What is it? What can we do for it? Um, but we hit that, as men definitely have that cycle. And I think we're just, we're not talking just in the same way that we're just starting over this last decade plus to really have these conversations about menopause. I think the next wave for men's sexual health care is to be more open about, oh, yeah, like this is really happening. And, it's not just you. I think a lot of men are just feeling really isolated in this. And that was a big piece for me about the way that I curated Soft Cock Appreciation this year is I really wanted to have men who facilitate men's groups. So I have a
Mhm.
couple different men who facilitate men's groups to talk about how we get over this isolation because especially in the world of prostate cancer, they're doing really incredible work around supporting men and giving men places to talk about their journey, learn from each other. I mean, it's really incredible what's happening in that sphere, but we need that more preventatively.
Mhm.
And it's hard to get men to talk to each other, hard to get partners to talk with each other.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm just thinking, like, I'm keep looking at the logo behind you,
Mhm,
and the rooster in the hammock, and then thinking about, let me pull it up so I don't say it wrong, but your
mhm,
tagline for this year was take a penetration vacation to explore the wisdom your body is trying to tell you and the possibilities it has to share. And I love that, especially that last part, the possibilities that it has to share, because I think when, as you're saying, you help to normalize soft cock, and not to derail myself from my thought process, but even just those two words together, soft cock. I think in how do I even say this? Like when I think, I'll share my person, when I think cock, I think like hard dick, right?
mhm.
When you're putting
Right.
the soft and cock together, like it feels so contradictory, but I also love it at the same time, because that's the energy that you're trying to get, like having that same energy, having that same love and appreciation for a hard cock, right?
Mhm.
Also for a soft cock. Let me digress from that, but
Yes. Yeah, no, and I think let me just say too, just for a second, that like I also really like that you're naming that, because one of the things that I learned in having more connection and relationship with people who are exploring the non-binary spectrum is that, cock is an energy
mm-hmm.
too,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, I have a cock energy,
Yes.
right? I don't have a physical cock, but I have a cock energy. And, to me, one of the reasons, because not everybody, resonates with that word. And that's one of the things that I bring up in each of the interviews this year is, is this your word? What is your word? But I like cock because it is this element of, the rooster really is the like, wake
Mm-hmm.
up and pay attention, is one thing, which I think is an important part of like the penis. But it's also like, wake up, it's a new day. And I think for a lot of people who are stuck in sexual shame or in ruts or, low libido, it's there also tends to be some difficulty in the ability to be present.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we know, especially about erectile issues, is that the fear, like for so many people, once they don't have their penis show up the way they want it to, then a loop starts to happen of fear and dread before it even happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're already flooding your body with the expectation and the fear. And so it's sort of a self fulfilling prophecy. So a lot of the work that we do, you and I do, and others do in this work is, how do we help people kind of break through that loop and learn how to be present
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to the experience of play and pleasure, that's possible when people bring their bodies together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love like practices like sensate focus, that you take focus off of genitals altogether. You can start this clothed or not clothed, but you're really just working on helping each other, like as a couple, get back into the body and focusing
Mm-hmm.
on touch and all of those non-genital spaces, like non-sexual spaces. Though I tell people all the time, I'm like, you can make a back massage sexy, right? Like I can
Right.
your forearms and like play with your fingers and make that sexy. Whereas, somebody might hear that and be like, yeah, right. I'm like, challenge accepted.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, just practices like that. And then, like you said, in the end of this tagline, like the possibilities that this opens to, I think there can be, I'm just even thinking of my own sexual experiences, like how many times like we've been able to explore, and you use the word play and like and fun, and just and have that back and forth, that banter, that exploration, that giddiness behind it even, in exploring each other, and just having fun again. And then, right, like, not, I'm not thinking, is he hard, is he not hard, and he's not thinking, is she turned on, is she not turned on, like you're just in that space, in that flow. And that's such an awesome place to be in, a place that I love to be in
It's
personally.
so exactly. It's so yummy. I mean, and there's so many things that are available. I mean, we have the world of toys. We have the world of, different sensory items to turn on other parts of the body. I mean, that's why, again, if you go to the Soft Cock Week conversations, within the bouquet of the 14 that I curated, there are some that are really like, here are specific ideas, right? Here are some ways to play because and really one of the themes of the week was we ended the week with an erotic open mic.
Mm.
Because one of the things that came up last year is that there's very little erotica, whether it's visual media or audio or written, that has scenes of how people enjoy, it tends to be very hard dick focused.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what we have to remember for all of us is that because we have such shit sex education, the majority of us get our sex education from our media, whether it's, for me, it was, in the early days reading Cosmo and then, but especially now with porn so accessible. So if we're not, we know that representation matters in all media. And if we're not seeing or hearing or reading scenes in which people are enjoying sexual connection and intimate connection without it being, and then his dick got really hard and rammed it into her, right? Or him or whatever, then there's a crisis of imagination. I mean, that's really what I hear a lot, is tell me, but how do I actually do it, right? My partner isn't getting hard. I I don't know. Like I don't have an image in my head of what am I supposed to do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What am I supposed to do with it?
Yeah.
Right? Or I'm not getting hard. And so there's this element which is, and I think it's not an either or, it's a both, right? It's an and, which is you certainly, and I'm going to talk more about the man's experience here. You certainly can do what so many men do, right? Which is I don't have a consistent erection or I don't have one at all. And so I really derive like an incredible feeling of pleasure by being the one who creates an environment where my partner has extreme delicious wonderful pleasure, right? That I'm deriving my pleasure from my partner's pleasure. And that is fabulous, right? Like I mean that's a really lovely thing to do. But if we're talking about the fact that the penis is part of the overall well being of the human body, that's where I kind of step in and say, yeah, but let's get some increased blood flow there. Let's get some nerve touch there. Like let's not get so focused on the I'm a giver that your penis is kind of just along for the ride of the mouth or the ride of the hands or the ride of the eyes. Like let's also, what are the ways that that you in your masturbation practice and a partner in learning new technique can feel, I like the words Lee Jagger uses, confident and competent in what you do with your hands, in what you do to actually help engage what's going on with the penis in a way that maybe could be helpful, right? That there's more to learn there. So a lot of times what I'm working on with people is technique of, I mean, I love to take a soft penis and use it as like a vibrator, right? There's something really incredible about when the penis is softer, being able to hold it and have it be not that hardness, but be more, as I like to call it, like, flippy floppy. But, if there's arousal running through the body, then the glands, the head of the penis is very, you know, uh, ripe, and having that like clitoris to glands connection can be like supercharged and super orgasmic, right? If we think about orgasm as the nerve, as the nervous system, erection as the cardiovascular system, and ejaculate as like the fluid system, that they're three. I always like to make sure at some point when I have a conversation, we remind people these are not all one thing, right? Because when we dissect them, when we take them apart, then more possibility in terms of the possibilities it has to share, more possibilities become open. So, so all that to say there's adding things in, like there's the toys, there's all these different things, and also the possibilities of exploring more what outer course is that includes the genitals, right? Or even being able to have a little bit of stuffing or a little bit of other sensation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just thinking of a couple podcasts that I have if people wanted to use these as resources too. I had a woman named Serena Haynes on the show to talk about cock worship, and she gives a lot of good language around
Mm,
like taking pressure off of cock, like not great for a man to stay hard for a long time. Like that's a lot that takes a lot of
yeah,
energy, right? And so if you're doing something like a cock worship, like honoring the fact that they are going to get hard or get soft, rather like normalize that,
yeah,
encourage that, in fact, like just allow them to relax and just feel and to be in their bodies with no shame attached. And then when you were talking specifically around technique, something like tantric penis massage, same thing, like a person that's experiencing, a tantric penis massage where it's a very long, drawn out thing. It's not, and I think this is part of it too. We have to change our mindsets from like, I need to get from A to B, like right to
hmm
orgasm as quick as possible. And then this thing is done, like really trying to scale back and enjoy our time and enjoy the experience. And so, yeah, something like tantric penis massage, like that's generally going to be a more of a lengthier process. And so,
yeah,
and just helping to eliminate shame from people, from men specifically, like feeling that need to perform. And I like that you spoke to specifically, like if one incident happened in the past and that's replaying, you're flooding your body with all of those feelings, right? Your body stores that, your body remembers that, whether consciously you're remembering it or not. And that's where I think sometimes people are like, no, I'm not thinking about that one time I didn't get hard. It's like your body probably is. So,
hmm
this is where sex therapy or sex coaching can definitely come into play to help with that.
absolutely, absolutely. Being able to, um, it's like, I think of it like sports psychology, right? Is, you just, if I was trying to make a 3-point shot, I wouldn't be imagining all the ways that I've missed. I would be imagining, the success. But again, we have to expand what success even means. One of the things that I see a lot, um, that is I think helpful for partners to know too, is that for a lot of men, I mean, it is supernatural, right? The ebb and flow, we call it the ebb and flow, right? Like there's, it's so natural for the penis to get hard, to then subside, to get hard and then subside, to get hard. If we hang out with it long enough, right? If we're putting pressure on it or we don't have a lot of time or whatever it is, I mean, sometimes quick is great. Don't get me wrong, right? But if we're taking time to linger, then to have that expectation, to have that image of like we're riding some waves. And, sometimes the waves are like giant and big, and sometimes they're like little ripples. But, if we're surfing together, if we're boogie boarding together, then there's no the pressure, it's not a pressure thing. But what I see a lot that happens is that it's very, very common when you change positions for
Yeah.
there to be a change in erectile flow,
Mhm.
right? So maybe things have been going really well for a little while, and then there's like you're just been in this position for too long because you're talking about blood flow, right? And what would be ideal would be to change position, but then there's this like, oh my gosh, when we change position, then I'm going to lose some erection. And I think the other thing that I notice happens is once the penis gets hard, I think a lot of partners um, forget that like the rhythm of the encounter isn't like foreplay penetration done, right? And that's why I like out of the world of intimacy coordination, intimacy choreography, we talk more about outer course and inner course,
Mhm.
right? And that it's all, if sex is the umbrella, then inside of sex are outer course and inner course, and that um when you're changing position, and if there's some loss, instead of like, oh, I'm kind of struggling to get hard again, and like now do a little oral or do a little hand stuff or like help the penis to return and then go back to penetration, as opposed to like, well, now that I'm laying on my back and he's moved on to standing up, I'm supposed to just lay here while he fumbles around, feeling like, wait, I was just hard and now I'm not hard, right? That there's a lot more opportunity. I mean, I love what you said, sort of about cock worship. Like there's just a lot more opportunity to tune in to your partner's body and be more active in this magic. I mean, one of the other logos that we have for this year is the squid, because I was looking at the emojis and I was like, we have a lot of emojis for hard dick. right? We have the eggplant, we have the rocket. I personally like the little joystick. There's lots of, we have the banana, we have the corn. I mean, there's so much for heart. And I was looking through the emojis to be like, well, what's the emoji for soft, for a soft penis? And I saw the squid and I was like, oh, that's totally it. Right. Because the squid is soft. It's also one of the smartest invertebrates that there is. And I think the penis is super, super smart. I mean, there's so many clients who've come to me and it's not medical and it's not like other types of like work stress or life stress where they tell me about what's going on with their relationship. And I'm like, if I was your penis, I wouldn't show up to that party either. Right. Like, so sometimes there's a wisdom in that, like that like kind of like gut brain, like there is a little bit of like, hold on a second. And then the way that the tentacles are sort of like the nerves in the pelvis, and the way the nervous system is. But that was why did I digress to the squid? I don't know. Now you'll have to tell.
No, I think another thing I wanted to know when you were talking too was like for the women that are listening to the show to also not take it personal if you are with a partner who become soft,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I hear all the time like women trying to say like, okay, it's not because of you that I'm not turned on. It's not because of you that I'm not wet. We know for our female bodies, right? Like there are so many other factors involved other than our partners around maybe challenges that we're experiencing sexually and to allow men to have that same
Hmm.
same reasoning, right? It's not because I'm
Right.
not attracted to you. It's not because I don't love you. It's not because I don't like what's happening right now or it doesn't feel good. There are so many other things, that could be happening. And again, it's like to help eliminate just shame, just all
Yeah.
around for everybody in the bedroom. If we could just rid that for all sexual people, right? Which is the majority of the world, like
Yeah.
how could intimacy look when shame is no longer present for us?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that that's a great point because and again, I'm going to look at it from a twofold place. One is absolutely we want to get rid of shame. We want to put no pressure on anybody to be in their body any differently than how the body is showing up in this moment, right? I mean, I could be expecting that we're going to have a phenomenal date on Saturday and then some shit goes down Saturday morning and no matter how much we've been like anticipating this time together, my body could just be like in a, fight, flight, freeze response that day that doesn't make it so that, I'm still showing up. I'm still happy to be with you, but my libido has shifted. My desire has shifted. All of that is real. It's all part of who we are as humans. And at the same time, there is an element, I think, especially for someone, who is used to a penis showing up a certain way. That is, what are the things that I could be learning? What are the things that I could be expanding and understanding? Do I actually know the anatomy of the penis? Do I understand how it works? Do I know that there's penis inside the body as well as outside the body? Am I helping my partner by massaging and touching that area between the testicles and the anus and the perineum to help engorge that part of the body more? When I'm on top of my partner, am I squeezing my internal vaginal muscles and my pelvic muscles to help keep, being flat on your back and maintaining an erection is a pretty challenging position for a lot of people because the blood flow has to go horizontal and then vertical, right? Like for a lot of people who are experiencing erectile issues, just paying attention to are you working with the flow of blood or against the flow of blood? Missionary and on your back isn't necessarily super great, for maintaining erection, but it's a really fun position to be in. It's really nice to have someone on top of you. So is there something that for me having a vagina, having somebody inside of me, am I and for me this would be working with a dildo first, like am I practicing how to essentially give like a good hand job with my vagina? right? To help my partner stay a little bit more engorged in positions, or like, so that what there's just, that whether it's your hand or your mouth or your vaginal walls, or, or your anus or whatever it is, that there's also, I think, the more we understand how engorgement works as spongy tissue, then the more we can be helpful play partners, because it's like, ooh, I can feel that you're starting to subside, so I have this trick that I can do, or I have this thing that I can do, or like I'm feeling like you're still engorged closer to my cervix, but I can feel that you're losing a little bit of blood engorgement a little bit closer to the base. So, let me do a couple little low Kegels down here. So there are things that we can do, that are fun for us. It's good tone for us too, to keep ourselves toned,
Mhm.
and also be in the place of, if none of this is showing up, that's okay too. Right. And I think, the other thing I want to say for partners is all of the information that's on Soft Cock Week, on all the conversations that we did, it is about, it's about that it's okay to not show up hard, and how to expand intimacy. Um, and I think that there are a lot of, all that my bent and Michelle's bent is about, this male sexuality. But, I've always kind of jokingly said, someone needs to make a dating app for men with ED and women with vaginismus, right? Like, that there's another reality that's out there, which is that there are a lot, and I have to say this to men a lot, who are living with shame, is that there are a lot of women who don't like penetration, right? Where that's not the way that they get their enjoyment. And there's a lot of pressure on women as well to to be to to be people who want that.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of the information that we shared over the week, and that's available for free year round, is also helpful in conversation for people who maybe even do have a partner who is able to get hard, but wants to expand the conversation with them to, hey, I don't need you. Not only do I not need you to always be hard, but actually, this isn't necessarily even my preferred way of playing and being connected. So let's look at some of this material together. Let's listen to some of this material together and see if there's some ideas that we can take away, that can make it so we're both feeling, excited and juicy with the time that we have, and that no one is in a state of fear or dread, or I'm doing this for you, but I'm not really in it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and even just that, like to be vulnerable and being able to share that with a partner, I think would be huge for a couple. Um, or again, just for people even just partnering up to have sex. They don't necessarily need to be in a couple or relationship. But thank you, Eric. Like this was
Mhm.
a wonderful episode, and I'm very excited. I think we'll have a lot of listeners with this. I think it'll be a great resource for people. Definitely a different way of looking at things, at
Yeah.
sexuality, sure. And
Yeah.
share, I know there's an Instagram page, there's a website that you mentioned that people can go to. So if someone's intrigued and wanting more information, where should they find this?
Yeah. So I think the best thing to do, my best recommendation, is to go to softcockweek.com, and on the menu it says 2024 Cockversations. And go onto that page, and that's where we have, it's called 14 Fabulous Cockversations. And there's a couple different ways to do it. So this is what I recommend. So look through, there's all the 14 that are there. Look at the titles, and on each one, you can click on it and it'll take you to a description of what we're talking about, kind of the essential questions, and see, if that resonates for you. See if it sparks curiosity, right? That's where I kind of like to start is, there's 14 here. What makes me curious? And you can then leapfrog, like this is a little lily pad. You can leapfrog around. Oh, this sounds like it's pertinent to me, or this isn't as pertinent to me, but maybe I'll come back to that later. So that's like one way to do it. Or the other way is I did kind of curate it to go from 1 to 14
Mhm.
on a journey. And you can do that, on whatever timeline that you have. But there is sort of a thread that for those who do that, there's, those people are telling me that that's been very transformational, right? To just also kind of immerse themselves in this journey of a lot of different ways of hearing and thinking about, um, just different points of view of what can we do when we're together and be intimate together and help each other to have these conversations. Because more than anything, just like what you're doing here, more than anything, what I'm trying to model with these conversations or these conversations is how to just make it easy to talk about. Right. And that's really what I've been hearing from a lot of the men who came through who did the journey with me during Soft Cock Week, which is it gave me the confidence to have these conversations with my partner, with my friends, with my providers in ways that I never did before. So that's really that resource. Soft Cock Week, we had some free live events that we're going to continue. We'll start doing a monthly gathering throughout the year, but the conversations are there year round, and I'm really curious, especially what your audience, what your followers, would get out of it. So, definitely let me know too if you listen to something or watch something and you have a aha or you have a question. You can always reach me. You can reach us at the Soft Cock Week email is scweek at protonmail.com. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. I just pulled it up myself, and some of these conversations, some things that you talked about, breaking through the stigma of softness, seeking soft cock erotica, some like finding soft cock porn. That was a thought that passed my mind. I'm like, can I go to my favorite porn website and type in soft cock and will stuff pop up? I'm curious now.
What often pops up with that is humiliation based. And so that was part of why we wanted to do the erotic open mic was to, see if we could explore, not that if that's your kink and that's your preference, more power to you, but that there isn't very much out there that is, venerating or also just, like I said, just exploring, here are some ways to do it. Right.
Absolutely. So much for coming on the show today. This was wonderful, and I
Thank you.
seeing and connecting with you again more in the future on the calls. I think it's we've had a couple people on the show from those calls, so it's wonderful to always run into people that are doing similar yet often very different things than you are. And yeah, I love just the variety that gets to come on the show too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for inviting me on. Thank you to everyone who is listening. And, I hope that you will enjoy the Soft Cock Appreciation Week resource because it's something that we're not talking enough about. And, the more we just normalize as everything that we do as sex coaches and intimacy professionals, the more we just normalize, hey, this is real. This is part of life. This is part of what is going on. And we don't need to make it bigger than it needs to be. But at the same time, again, as somebody who lost a partner because of not engaging in conversation and not knowing, I think it's also really important that we expand our understanding and our knowledge of how the male human sexual function actually works over the lifespan so that we can keep our men healthy and happy and alive. I like to say, I would say it takes a village to raise a man, but because we're trying to, not focus on raising, we can just say it takes a village to, to support a happy, healthy man. And we need a lot more of those in our world right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you loved it, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And if you really fucking loved it, make sure to tag me on social media at @TheRachelMain. I'll see you next week.